Day 17 of the war with Iran, and here's where things stand. 13 U.S. service members have lost their lives. More than 140 have been injured. On the unintended consequences side of the House, Donald Trump is trying and failing to bully our allies into helping him break Iran's stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz, through which 1/5 of the world's oil supply travels. The price of gas continues to soar, and Donald Trump's energy secretary admits that there is no guarantee that prices will come down soon. Facing a mountain of bad headlines, Team Trump's response? To threaten to revoke the broadcast licenses of networks who dare to report the truth. Now in its third week, and the war with Iran does not look anything like the, quote, little excursion Trump claimed. Today, an Iranian drone struck Dubai's airport. That is one of the busiest in the world, causing a new round of disruptions. Israel is expanding its operations in southern Lebanon to fight Hezbollah. Here at home, oil prices now average $3.71 a gallon. That is up almost 25 cents from 1 week ago. Pressed about the spike in prices, Trump's energy secretary, that's Chris Wright, tried to say that this is a case of short-term pain for long-term gain before backing off that claim in a matter of seconds.
This is why President Trump needed to act now to stop the killing of American soldiers, to stop the destabilization in the region, and to end Iran's ability to threaten energy markets. Yes, we go through this period of short-term disruption, but better to do it now than to have a nuclear-armed Iran.
Are you really sure it's going to be short-term? Can you guarantee it'll just be weeks before prices go down?
Hey, there's no guarantees in wars at all. I can guarantee the situation would be dramatically worse without this military operation to defang the Iranian regime.
Now the Trump administration is asking for help to solve the oil supply crisis it created. The Wall Street Journal reports that the administration wants to cobble together a coalition of countries that will escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The plan, though, falls apart the minute you try to read the fine print. Wall Street Journal explains, quote, the U.S. and potential coalition countries are still discussing whether those operations would begin before or after the war ends. New York Times reports that no one has signed up. From their report, quote, the sharpest refusal to his belated effort to build an international coalition against Iran came Monday from Germany, whose defense minister said, quote, this is not our war. We did not start it, end quote. Top officials in Japan, Italy, and Australia said Monday that their countries will not participate in efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Others were non-committal, including France, South Korea, and Britain, whose Prime Minister Keir Starmer said his country, quote, would not be drawn into wider war. From our allies, who Donald Trump has spent more than a year denigrating and maligning their sacrifices in past wars, Donald Trump now would like those same allies to sign up to put their soldiers in harm's way for a war that Donald Trump started without any of their input. Watch.
We have some countries where we have 45,000 soldiers, great soldiers, protecting them from harm's way. And we have done a great job. And when we want to know, do you have any minesweepers? Well, would rather not get involved, sir. I said, for 40 years we're protecting you, and you don't want to get involved in something that is very minor. Very few shots going to be taken because they don't have many shots left. But they said, we'd rather not get involved.
As Trump's efforts to find a solution to the oil supply crisis falter, the New York Times is reporting that here at home, the war with Iran puts Donald Trump further from his goals of lowering interest rates. From that reporting, quote, officials at the Fed are widely expected to hold rates steady at a range of 3.5% to 3.75%, extending a pause that began in January. Most officials believe rates at this level are only modestly restraining growth, if at all, suggesting little rush to change course for the time being. That approach is directly at odds with what Trump wants. Donald Trump faltering in his efforts to solve an oil supply crisis that threatens to turn into an economic crunch is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times diplomatic correspondent Michael Crowley is here. Also joining us, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling is here. He served as the commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe. His new book, If I Don't Return, A Father's Wartime Journal, is amazing. It is out now. And with me at the table, executive editor and New York bureau chief for The Economist, Charlotte Howard, is here. I'm torn between which one of you to start with, but I'm going to just follow on to the economic indicators flashing bright yellow, maybe even red.
Well, we've had some data in recent days about consumer prices in January, which seem to be creeping up. So even before this war began, there was upward pressure on prices, which was at odds with the Trump administration's long push to get this Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. And I think now that you see oil prices consistently above $100 a barrel, it seems very, very unlikely, not just that the Fed won't lower interest rates at its meeting in March, but even looking further ahead, it seems very unlikely that this Federal Reserve is going to take steps to lower interest rates. And of course, this comes at a time when there's been just historic friction between the administration and Jerome Powell. You had a judge
trying to prosecute him.
Exactly. A judge rejected the effort to subpoena Jerome Powell just a few days ago. So even that might have been this morning, excuse me. And so, you know, it's quite an interesting moment for the Fed. But I do think you see the Trump administration realizing the extent to which it cannot control the economic fallout from this war. It cannot bully, or at least so far has been unable to bully allies into participating in an effort to open up the Strait of Hormuz again. You know, it seems that insulting allies is not a way to get them to work with you. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Pete Hegseth calling war deliberations pearl clutching on the part of America's allies. So, you know, I really think that you're seeing right now the Trump administration trying to throw its weight around, but without much effect.
I want to ask you about the strikes in Dubai. I mean, this has been a place that has been such a magnet for business, for tourism, for development. It has exploded in popularity. People have relocated from all over the world, and now very much not immune from this widening war.
Yeah, I think there's been a real effort on behalf of not just Dubai, but of course Abu Dhabi as well, to position themselves as safe havens within a volatile region with quite a lot of success. You know, you've seen, as you just alluded to, lots of foreign multinationals coming in, people, expats setting up within Dubai. And I think the illusion of security has been shattered in recent weeks. And so when you think about the participation of Gulf states in this war, you know, that's something that we need to continue to watch, because there are real risks to America's allies in the region. And so the conflict in that regard may continue to escalate.
Michael Crowley, the Trump administration, really from top to bottom, has been at war against journalists covering the war. Some of it may have started with the accurate coverage of the service men and women who lost their lives in the plane crash in Iraq, but it certainly extended through Pete Hegseth's briefing on Friday, where he said Larry Ellison can't take over CNN soon enough. Brandon Carr got in on the game, threatening to revoke licenses. The Wall Street Journal and the New York Times have had some extraordinary reporting on how haphazard not just the entry into the war has been, but the response to the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has called them straits. It's just one. He's said several times publicly that they should just go for it, like go through, as though there's either a lack of understanding about the insurance issues or the military issues, and or both. And even those comments I played today, he said they won't fire at you because there's nothing left to fire. I've not seen a single military analyst on any network echo that assessment. Just take me through where things stand.
Yeah, Nicole, and it's unfortunate because, you know, the argument here is that the media is reflexively criticizing anything President Trump does and is overplaying a sense of chaos and confusion. First of all, I would just note that, you know, a huge number of our headlines are just factually stating that there's a massive aerial campaign underway. We're hitting hundreds of Iranian targets, inflicting massive damage, killing Iranian leaders. And, you know, the TV networks carry the briefings that the Pentagon does live. So giving them a platform to get their views out in an unfettered way. And President Trump, of course, when he speaks, usually gets live coverage. So the the basic facts in the administration's message are getting out there. There seems to be this puzzling objection to covering casualties, and when a preliminary investigation the U.S. government says was a U.S. Tomahawk missile hit a girls' school and killed, 175 or so innocent Iranians, many of them children. We did report aggressively on it, as did other outlets. And I would note that the administration tried to sort of deflect and dissemble, President Trump in particular. So, on their side of the ledger, there's not always been transparency, and there has been in that particular case, an effort to sweep what looks like a terrible tragedy under the rug. So it's frustrating to hear that, no doubt. And look, the other piece of this is that there's no contesting the fact that the administration's message has been all over the place. And President Trump has repeatedly cited different goals for this mission, at times has said it has involved protecting the Iranian people from their regime, taking out and replacing the regime, finding leaders he can work with. He's pretty consistent in talking about the nuclear program and the missile program, but these are different threads, and they, from the words of the president and his senior advisors, they don't add up to a clear, coherent war plan. And so I think that that's been reflected in the coverage, but I think to lash out at the media is not fair. And, just to finish here, I would say that what you have right now is a huge question mark. A lot of people had suspected that by now President Trump might just declare victory and call this off and try to get back to lower oil prices. As former Secretary of State Antony Blinken put it last week, declare victory and having traded one Ayatollah for another. But it looks like he's hanging in there for now, and he's suggesting they're going to solve this problem in the Strait of Hormuz. Nicole, it's a huge problem. It's not something you can do quickly. It's not a scenario that he prepared the American public for. It's not a scenario that he himself seems to have thought through in a lot of detail. And I would point in particular to the fact that he's now asking for help from U.S. allies who were totally excluded from the planning and preparation of this, who were caught by surprise and in some cases actually sort of insulted and said, you're not welcome. And now the president needs them for this problem from hell in the Strait of Hormuz. And again, I don't see a plan. So the press coverage is going to reflect that, and we're probably in for more criticism.
Why are we protecting countries that don't protect us? And I've always felt that was a weakness of NATO. We were going to protect them. But I always said, when in need, they won't protect us.
I think you might have that backwards. President Trump wants NATO countries to help in his fight against Iran, but his ask comes along with a threat, telling the Financial Times if there's no response or if there's a negative response, I think it'll be very bad for the future of NATO. Joining us, the Defense Minister of Estonia, Hanno Pevkur. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
What is the reaction to Donald Trump's threat to NATO that if you don't help, it'll be bad for the alliance?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that Estonia has always been a very strong ally also to the United States. We've been together in Afghanistan. We've been together in Iraq. We've been together in the most toughest regions, like Helmand, for instance, and we've lost per capita the same amount of people and soldiers as the United States. So we've been after 9/11 together with the U.S. And definitely when one of the allies feels threatened or needs help, then of course all the allies will contribute to each other's security.
Donald Trump is demanding that now the United States needs help, specifically in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Should NATO help?
Well, Strait of Hormuz is definitely an issue for all of us. It's not only the question of the United States and the farmers of the United States, which we clearly understand are affected by this. And the season is coming. So it's the same also in Estonia, that the season is coming, the oil price is going up, and nobody wants to see that. So when we want to fight with that, and when we want to be in normal situation again, when the oil price is normal, then we need to deal with that issue. And of course, collectively we have to see it's not only the question of NATO. U.S. is also part of NATO. When NATO decides to collectively that we will act as NATO, this is one thing, but when allies will decide also together, then this is another option. So let's see what will be the clear ask from the President of the United States or from the U.S. administration, and then we can make decisions. But definitely we are all interested of that the Strait of Hormuz will be free for trade.
Some of the bigger countries within the alliance, the UK, Germany, et cetera, have said they have nothing to do with this. This is not something that they want to get involved with. Donald Trump didn't consult them first. He's made it clear that he doesn't need the alliance and that this is a defensive alliance, not an offensive alliance. They see this as an offensive that the United States decided to undertake without consulting NATO. Given that, I know you just said that the oil price affects everybody, obviously does, fertilizer as well, which could lead to a food crisis. Given that, do you see any further reason to push within the alliance to have the position change?
Well, and to add to fertilizers and oil, we need to add also the LNG. So that means that all the energy and also fertilizers are affecting us. And as I said, it's our common concern at the moment. So when the U.S. representatives in NATO will raise that issue, then definitely the allies will discuss that. But nevertheless, we need to understand that also the cause of that at the moment is Iran. And Iran is keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed. So, of course, we need to find what is the best option, how to react to that, and how to keep the Strait of Hormuz free. It's not just one question, one answer topic. We need to deal with that comprehensively.
Are you concerned about how this is affecting Russia? Because this strait is closed, the president has lifted sanctions on Russian oil, which thereby gives Russia more money to wage its war in Ukraine. Does that make you worried about your country?
Absolutely. And this has been also here in Washington one of my messages, that actually the one who is benefiting from this situation is actually Russia. They will have a lot of extra oxygen in their budget. So they've calculated their budget in this year with the oil price of $40-50 per barrel, and now it's double. So definitely they will have a lot of new money coming into the budget, and they can conduct the war in Ukraine more freely. And definitely Russia is benefiting from this situation. So the sooner the situation in Middle East will be settled, the easier it is also for Ukraine. And to be honest, from our perspective, from the European perspective, the situation in Ukraine is still the most concerning one. And we need to handle also this situation, how to give Ukraine the best possible best possible option for the negotiations for the peace.
Hannu Pevkar, thank you so much. Defense Minister of Estonia, really good to have you.
Thank you.
When Trump's Energy Secretary Chris Wright tweeted out that the U.S. Navy was escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz, when in fact we weren't, did he think they were? Did somebody tell him that we were? Did he have a good reason to believe it? When he did that, that wasn't even the start of how well the Trump administration is handling this teensy little problem Trump reportedly thought would be no big deal when he decided to launch an unprovoked war on Iran. Trump reportedly told his advisors that he did not believe Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz if he attacked Iran. Of course, Iran did. Then Trump's defense secretary said the Strait of Hormuz was open for transit, except for the small matter of the Iranians attacking ships that tried to pass through it. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln. Then Trump told Fox News that ship captains should, quote, show some guts and just sail through the strait because they had nothing to fear because Iran was defeated and wouldn't attack any more ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And then Iran attacked more ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And then Trump said that the U.S. Navy would be happy soon, very soon, to start escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And then the Navy was like, no, my lord, no, we cannot do that. The memorable phrase there was that it would be a, quote, kill box for the United States Navy if they even tried to do that. Then, in advance of a presidential press conference today, Trump administration sources apparently told reporters that very soon, the U.S. government would be announcing a coalition of allies who would be working together to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. We were about to announce who our allies were going to be in this joint collective effort. And everybody printed it like that meant it was going to happen. When will you learn? Watch what they do, not what they say. Because then the president held that presidential press conference and he announced, quote, "We don't need anybody to help us in the Strait of Hormuz. We don't need anybody. We can do it ourselves." Then he said that he'd be announcing very soon who, nevertheless, was going to be helping us in the Strait of Hormuz. Then he berated and insulted our allies for not doing anything to help us in the Strait of Hormuz. And then reporters all over the world started checking with their own governments. And indeed, whatever he thought he was announcing about other countries coming to help us in the Strait of Hormuz, nobody is coming to help. And in fact, he can't do it alone. And so, what do we got? I mean, maybe we'll get a ballroom? Russia's doing really well out of all this, as the skyrocketing price of oil fills up the Kremlin's coffers and makes them solvent again after all these years of dictatorship and corruption and going on 5 years of their disastrous war in Ukraine. Russia now is not just getting rich off of Trump's war in Iran. Russia is outright helping Iran kill U.S. troops and target U.S. facilities in the Middle East. Trump's U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, says Russia has a wartime, quote, strategic partnership with Iran. Iranian officials have publicly confirmed that they have Russia's, quote, military cooperation. We reported last week here on this show that Trump had responded to that by really making Russia pay. Oh, I'm sorry. No, by relaxing U.S. sanctions on Russia. Since then, he's done so again. He has further relieved Russia of the burden of U.S. sanctions while Russia is helping kill American troops. But it doesn't stop there. David Korn at Mother Jones Magazine reports that Trump's DOJ has also, very quietly, just chosen this auspicious time while we're at war with Iran. They've just chosen now to ask the courts to withdraw a guilty plea and reverse a prison sentence that was given to a guy who the FBI said is linked to Russian intelligence. The guy has been in jail because he pled guilty to lying to the FBI, specifically to bringing the FBI fake stories about President Biden supposedly taking bribes. The FBI concluded not only that those stories were false, but that this guy deliberately lied in bringing that stuff to the FBI and that he was linked to Russian intelligence at the time he was doing this. Now, Trump's Justice Department is trying to get the guy sprung and get his guilty plea reversed. The court filing in this guy's case has been signed by Todd Blanche, Trump's handpicked number 2 official at the Justice Department, trying to help Russia and reportedly Russian intelligence, while Russia is using Russian intelligence to help Iran kill American troops and target American facilities in the Middle East. And, you know, maybe our president just can't stop himself from acting to help Russia, even when Russia is acting to kill Americans. Maybe he just can't stop himself. It just feels so good he can't stop. But doesn't it seem like in the middle of this war, he should be able to stop himself from at least helping Iran? From helping the Iranian regime, which he has just declared war on? Because also, quietly, amid this inexplicable war on Iran, Trump's Justice Department has also just moved to drop the largest Iranian sanctions case ever in history. This is a case involving a bank called Haq Bank. They're being prosecuted for, again, the largest ever known violation of sanctions on the Iranian regime, for illegally sending tens of billions of dollars to Iran. That's what that prosecution is about. And in the middle of Trump waging war on Iran, bombing Iran, supposedly because he's so opposed to the Iranian regime, Trump now simultaneously has had his Justice Department drop that case, the largest Iranian sanctions case ever, because now suddenly he wants to let all that slide. It's almost like he's not really doing things for the reason he says he's doing them, right? So the Saudis paid $2 billion to Trump's son-in-law, Jared. And now Jared is the U.S. government's point person in the Middle East. The New York Times now reports that while Jared is serving as the U.S. government's point person in the Middle East, Jared is simultaneously asking the Saudis for yet more billions of dollars for his private business. More than $2 billion they've already given him. Now he wants more. You know what? Why would they say no? For the low, low price of what they've already given him, the Saudis have apparently discovered the price of renting out something called the Armed Forces of the United States of America to attack their rival nation, Iran, for a war that makes a lot of sense for the leaders of Saudi Arabia and Israel, but makes no sense at all for the United States. The New York Times reports this weekend that the Saudi Crown Prince, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, has been on the phone frequently with President Trump since the war started, telling him to keep bombing, keep, quote, hitting the Iranians hard. Keep it up. More of this war, right? We paid for it. We're going to get what we paid for. I got to say, I don't know why this isn't more of a show-stopping scandal in our country, right? Is it that hard to see what this is? I mean, here's this guy actively asking X country for money. They've already given him billions of dollars. He's asking for billions more dollars for his personal business, his private business. He's asking X country for money. At the same time he's asking them for money, he is also making U.S. government policy toward that country. That's it, right? Those are all the dots you have to connect. I mean, this is not like string theory, right? The result, I mean, if this guy's asking this country for money for himself while also making U.S. government policy toward that country, the resultant policy is likely to be whatever that country wants it to be. Because if it isn't, then Jared's going to be less likely to get the money that he is asking them for, right? The interests of the United States are being exchanged for private income for the president's son-in-law. Is this hard to see? Is this hard to grasp? Right? While we're all wondering why it is really that we're fighting this war they can't explain. I mean, for his part, the president's son-in-law says he's following the law and following ethics rules, but how would we know? They also aren't even making him file financial disclosures. And Russia helps kill American service members and gets paid for it by the Trump administration. And don't worry, BP will get new oil for us from the molten center of the earth. Because look, they built something with duct tape they say will work to drill it all up. And the tropical walruses will junk shot the thing for us if anything goes wrong. So we'll all be fine. Meanwhile, this is the most unpopular war in modern American history. The president is trying to manage that by today threatening to kill reporters who don't report on the war the way he wants them to. That'll fix it. That'll fix it. Maybe he'll take a page from Putin and tell us we're no longer allowed to call it a war. We all have to start calling it an excursion like he does, or we'll all go to jail, or he'll kill us all. Sure, that'll do it. The war is unlikely to get more popular in days ahead, as Trump's repeated declarations of victory have not proven to be enough to protect U.S. forces and facilities that have come under fire from Iran and their proxies. A U.S. facility in Bahrain, the U.S. facility in Kuwait, the U.S. embassy in Iraq, the U.S. facilities in Saudi Arabia. We weren't even capable of keeping our ally Kuwait from accidentally shooting down not one, not two, but three of our F-15 fighter jets on the first full day of the war. How was Kuwait able to shoot down 3 F-15s? Now we're sending in a Marine Expeditionary Force as the president refuses to rule out boots on the ground, refuses to rule out ground troops.
Joining us now, one of the members of that bipartisan group, Democratic Senator Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico.
Senator, so good to have you at the table. Let's start with the request that you're making of the Government Office of Accountability into the DOJ, an audit of the DOJ over their handling and release of these files. Do you believe at this point that the GAO is still operating as an independent entity?
Look, I believe the GAO is still operating as an independent entity. And I'll say this, is my Republican colleagues have been trying to get rid of the darn place. We need an independent scorekeeper to tell us what something costs, what something is, and what something is not. And sadly, right now, it's one of the few places where you can still get some facts associated with what policy is and what it's not.
You know, Pam Bondi has repeatedly defended the Department of Justice's compliance with the law that Congress passed, that the president signed. And obviously, I think we can all, anybody that, you know, can see, hear, touch, feel, or have heard, knows that that is actually not true because there was a deadline. The Department of Justice notably did not meet the deadline. So by virtue of that, they are not in compliance. What do you think you're going to find with this audit?
The question in this audit is abundantly clear. It's a very simple letter. There's 12 items on here that say you need to ask some answers and specific questions here. And what it's saying is, who did the Department of Justice appoint to do this? What did the Department of Justice tell them to do? Which political names did you tell the folks doing the work to cover up or protect them and not put them in? And why in the world, if this was done correctly, where the victim's name is not redacted? There was one mistake after another here, and so this is just very simple. And the work of my colleagues here, I just want to, say thank you to Senator Merkley and Senator Durbin and Senator Murkowski. This is bipartisan with the inquiries, and if I go back home and I talk to constituents, Democrats, Republicans have voted for Donald Trump as MAGA. They want to see what's going on here. And then the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. So there's too many questions back home.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. In fact, your Attorney General for the state, Raul Torres, did an op-ed and noted, "I want to be honest about the challenges ahead. Epstein has been dead for years. Zorro Ranch has changed ownership. Physical evidence may no longer exist, and the statute of limitations has likely run out on many potential offenses. These are real obstacles, and survivors deserve to hear them stated plainly. But we will follow the evidence wherever it leads and leave no credible question unexplored. At the conclusion of our investigation, we will issue a full public report. The people of New Mexico and those who were harmed are entitled to a complete and transparent accounting of what we found and what we did not." This has now been bought and is in the process of transforming into something, I guess. What is your understanding about this ranch? Why the feds stopped the investigation regarding the ranch earlier on when Epstein was alive? What do you know about it and the sale and what's going to happen to it? And because a lot of bad things happened here. And as the Attorney General noted, it requires an investigation so people understand exactly what happened.
Well, two things are happening right now, Michael, in New Mexico. One, the Attorney General of New Mexico, Raul Torres, is moving forward with that investigation. Number two, the New Mexico State Legislature, under the leadership of State Representative Andrea Romero, working with the governor of the state, Michelle Lujan Grisham, they passed legislation to create the Truth Commission. So there's two different sets of eyes that are going to be looking at what happened in Zorro. Now, what I can say with my review of those unredacted files when I went to the Department of Justice, there's no question that there were disturbing, disgusting, illegal acts that were taking place. And even if you look at the redacted part, the victim in Florida who flew maybe to New York and then went to New Mexico, and then there's victim after victim that landed up in New Mexico. There's even photos that are in the unredacted version. It doesn't show who's in them, but it's showing what was going on in New Mexico. And quite honestly, Michael, there's no good reason. There's no good reason why the Department of Justice should have stopped investigating this. Everyone should have been looking at this. They have a private airstrip. They were using commercial space as well. People were driving in and out. I mean, it's just disgusting what was going on there. And the fact that someone decided to pull back to protect some people is what I'm guessing. There's a question that I have about who was covering up for whom and who got the benefit here. But it's just disgusting.
Well, and you also start to see how there was a patchwork happening here that made it very difficult for these survivors to actually find justice. For one thing, New Mexico simply had at the time different laws on the books that changed statute of limitations. In addition to that, the investigation doesn't open in New Mexico until 2019, after the statutes of limitations had expired for some crimes. That investigation was shut down at the urging of federal authorities in New York, who were building their own multi-state case, but left the ranch largely unexamined. I mean, you just see systematic failure after systematic failure, right? The fact that New Mexico was not able to launch their own investigation back in 2019 because of what was happening in New York, because of what had happened in Florida, it all begins to, I don't know, it begs more questions than it offers answers.
Conspiracy theory lives.
Absolutely correct. There are only more questions associated with why this thing got trampled on, if you will, or why New Mexico was told you need to stay out of this. And in the end, it's the victims that no one was looking after when all of this stuff was going on as well. Again, if you go and you read these files for yourself, whether they're the redacted or the unredacted version, New Mexico is mentioned in there, Zorro Ranch is mentioned in there, the flights going in that way, on the private airstrip, the commercial airline. I mean, there's just no question the stuff that was going on there.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Can I get your thoughts on Greg Bovino? We've now heard that he has plans to retire at the end of the month. This is from Axios. Gregory Bovino, the Border Patrol official who became the face of the Trump administration's aggressive immigration crackdown, plans to retire at the end of March, he told Breitbart Texas. Didn't know Breitbart had local outlets. Bovino led President Trump's immigration operations in Minnesota, but was sidelined after federal agents killed 2 U.S. citizens. He returned to his prior role in El Centro, California. Are there questions for Greg Bovino?
Well, look, first, good riddance. He's eligible for retirement like in a year. But why isn't anybody investigating the 2 people that got killed, that got murdered, American citizens, while he was in charge? And by the way, Secretary Noem was in charge as well. And now the 2 of them just find another job, decide that they're going to retire, and everything goes away? BS. I need to be careful with my language, Simone, but BS to that. That is just ridiculous. And again, another cover-up. My parents, growing up, they told me, the lie's bad, but the cover-up's worse.
Come on.
And everything that we're seeing right now, it's one set of cover-ups after another, questions that are not being answered. And if this guy was there, what was he telling these agents? We now know that they were hiring agents without training them. There's at least 3 Proud Boys that we know that work with ICE now. There might be others as well.
President Trump also made a pretty stunning revelation about a Republican member of Congress, one who Speaker Mike Johnson talked about and responded to quickly.
We had one man who was very ill. It looked like he wasn't going to make it. I don't know. I won't mention his name. Should I? Do other people know his name?
Congressman Neil Dunn of Florida had some real health challenges, and it was very serious, and had a pretty grim diagnosis. And I mentioned it to the president, and I said, Congressman Dunn is a real champion and a patriot because he's still coming to work. And if others got this diagnosis, they would be apt to go home and retire. And
what was the diagnosis?
It was, I think it was a terminal diagnosis.
He would be dead by June.
Okay, that wasn't public, but yeah, okay. It was grim. That's what I was going to say. I don't think
with a heart problem, by the way. This was a heart problem.
The man has a new lease on life. He acts like he's 30 years younger, and he walked into the conference meeting, and we thought we'd seen a ghost. And I spoke with him over the weekend, and he's encouraged and thankful, and he thanks the president for his leadership and intervention.
He called to say that he was terminal, really bad heart. There's nothing they can do. I said, that's bad. Number one, it was bad because I liked him. Number 2, it was bad because I needed his vote. But he really said, Mike, I'm going to last this out for the president and you.
Donald Trump also said that he did help get that Republican congressman with a terminal diagnosis medical treatment at Walter Reed. Joining us now is MS Now's Laura Barone-Lopez from Washington, D.C. Jake Sherman is co-founder of Punchbowl News and an MS Now political contributor. Stuart Stevens, senior advisor at the Lincoln Project and chief strategist for Mitt Romney's 2012 campaign. Laura, what more do we know about this situation with the congressman?
Well, right now, we essentially just know what the president and Speaker Johnson were laying out there. It seems to be unclear whether or not this the congressman has been cleared of this diagnosis or not, or whether or not he is in remission with this diagnosis. But again, it's just stunning that the president, we've seen him do this before, not necessarily with someone's private medical history, but where he will say things out loud that someone has told him that was intended to be private. And it was stunning that in the middle of him talking about Iran and the state of the war, that he decided to essentially out the medical diagnosis of this lawmaker. And again, another thing that is telling about the president is a lot of this tends to go back to transaction for the president, where he said that, of course, he wanted the congressman to be healthy, but also that he needed his vote because there are tight margins in Congress right now, Chris.
To say the least, Jake, there are tight margins. Also, you saw kind of the look on the face of the Speaker of the House, who was not expecting the president to make public as much as he did. But are you familiar, or how familiar are you with this situation and more broadly, what it does mean for Speaker Johnson and what's happening in the House?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the situation. We reported last week or the week before, I've lost count, I've lost track, that the speaker said at a Republican fundraiser in Florida that Dunn had a terminal diagnosis. And we were told by the leadership months ago, within the last 2 months, that he would not be in Congress anymore, would be gone by July. There were some murmurs that he would not make it until July. That's not something that, we reported, because it's not. This is a man's life we're talking about. This isn't, a carton of milk expiring. This is a man's life. Dunn had pushback against reporting that he was going, not our reporting, but others reporting that he was going to resign. He said he was going to serve until the election. He was not slated to run for re-election. But the idea that he had a terminal diagnosis is something that had been public, that Johnson said to a room of Republican donors and members and aides in outside of Miami a couple of weeks ago. So it's a very delicate situation. Neil Dunn is a workhorse member of Congress. He's not someone that you see on television a lot, but he's somebody who has who has been here for a while and is somebody who's well respected in the conference. And his health situation is obviously quite dire. And I don't think anyone expected, not least, certainly not me, but not least, Dunn and his staff probably, and his family, that Trump would say something like this. So it's a quite delicate situation.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying, Stuart, that is the politics of it, and you can't ignore the politics of it. But as Jake points out, this is a very human situation, that someone who has served his country and served it for a very long time is facing potentially a life-threatening illness. And I just wonder what you make of that exchange between the president and the speaker.
Republicans, back when I worked in the party, we used to say that character is destiny and character counts. And that's one of the things that Republicans were right about. Donald Trump is just the absolute worst person in the world. This is disgusting what he's done. He cares about nothing but what himself. He has this chaotic mind that bounces around from different things, like some sort of old-fashioned pinball machine on tilt. And everything is how it relates to him. This is how toddlers relate to the world. So, he gets some sort of impression and he responds to it. There's no thought. There's no empathy. There's no sense of decency. And look, this affects the country because the president is more than just a chief executive. We used to say this all the time. This was said when Bill Clinton was going through these scandals, that he represents something that is bigger, that the country aspires to. And I just have to say, I just got back from Ukraine, and you compare the leaders of these two countries and their character and what it means for the national identity of Ukraine to have a leader they can look up to with courage, and what it does to America to have this absolute, just horrible person as president of the United States. This is something that is not going to change rapidly. It's why you see these groups of Republicans, or these young Republicans that are up there with all this neo-Nazi, pro-Hitler stuff. This stuff sticks with us. And it's as soon as we can get beyond it. But I just asked my old Republicans I helped elect, really? Is this who you are? You can't speak out against this? And the answer consistently has been no, they can't. They're afraid to.
Jake, I think you can speak to the relationship between the president and Speaker Johnson. I think you and I were speaking just last week about how he has lasted longer than a lot of other speakers have, particularly in the Trump years. But here he is again, put in, let's call it an awkward situation of having to walk that very delicate line between wanting to respect someone who he knows and has worked with and obviously who's fighting for his life, and on the other hand, having to, in some ways, let the president know that this was something that was maybe beyond what was wanted to be talked about.
Well, it's hard to put that back in the box after the president says that, right? I mean, I don't think there's much that Johnson could do there, but they do share a very close relationship, Trump and the Speaker of the House, mostly because I think the Speaker of the House has executed or attempted to execute on most everything that Trump wants to do, and it's a different relationship than he had with the previous two Republican speakers, Kevin McCarthy and Paul Ryan, who had their own agenda, so to speak, and had their own viewpoint of the world. And I think Johnson takes the view that his job is to execute on behalf of the president. And if he has any disagreements or any divergence from the president's points of view, he's going to try to hash it out with him behind the scenes. And if that doesn't work, his priority is to execute on the president's agenda, not his own. That's the tack he has taken. We'll have to see where that leads them in November. But Johnson, took pains to a certain degree to not be so forward about the Neil Dunn situation, because this is somebody who is quite ill, obviously, and is according to reporting, according to what the leadership believes, and he did not mention I don't know if it's a fact, but the idea that he was not going to be around in June. That's not something that he had said. And there's not much that he could do about Trump saying it. So, I mean, I guess that's how he handled the situation. I don't know how else you're supposed to handle it in that case.
Yeah, Trump said he would be dead by June, and Johnson says, okay, yeah, that wasn't public. Obviously, our thoughts are always with people who are going through terrible situations like that. We're with the congressman. We are with Susie Wiles, who got a diagnosis of breast cancer. It was made public earlier today, but in early stages, and so hopefully she has a full recovery. And on that note, I thank Laura Barone Lopez, Jake Sherman, and Stuart Stevens.